Welcome to Someone's Gotta Drive. I want to put a trigger warning out there that this podcast does include drug addiction, spousal abuse, parental drug addiction, domestic violence. And while this podcast is meant to be validating, it can be triggering for some. In our last episode, I was talking about how I was helping my ex-husband run a pizza joint and how the owners also owned other businesses that they asked me to help run. A new owner had come in and it was kind of blindsiding. I was really close with the owners. And honestly, this new owner, who was an ex-Marine, pretty much came in and said all the things that we had been doing was crap and not good, and how he was going to whip this place into shape. And it was really discouraging, actually, because I had busted my ass trying to do everything I could to make this place better. But, like I said before, I could only go so far and do so much. I couldn't stop my ex-husband from selling marijuana out of the pizza joint. I couldn't stop him from having a crappy attitude. Honestly, anytime something needed to be done, he did the main stuff, but if it was like the health department came in and said these things failed, I was the one fixing those things. So after about 2 or 3 weeks of this new owner, I had finally had enough. He was an asshole. I didn't care to work for him. And honestly, I was hearing complaints from my ex as well. So I decided to leave. But I knew that by me leaving, that meant that my brother and my husband were going to have to go as well. So my ex-husband went and got a job at a local restaurant. Pretty much begged them for the job, saying, "Hey, I've been running this restaurant for a while, and now, as much as I love it, I have to leave." My brother got a job at a local gas station, and I went to go back and work for the construction company doing marketing. I kind of thought, you know what? I made more money doing that. I can handle that for a little bit while I look for something else. Every day, and I mean it, every day, my ex-husband would just bitch and complain about how bad it was to work for this restaurant. And then he would go and work for the restaurant. And then you'd go pick him up. And then for hours, you would hear him bitch and complain about how bad it was to work for that restaurant. The pizza joint had been sold in July. By this point, it's now Thanksgiving. And I was working for the construction company I had worked for in the past doing marketing. And I was also working for the previous owners of the pizza joint with their construction company as well, doing administrative assistant work and making sure like bills were being done, things were being filed, stuff like that. And while I was working the night shift for the construction company doing the marketing, I had received a call from my ex's cousin. And she said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't find your cell phone number and I've really been trying to get a hold of you." And I was like, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "No, actually, it's not. Your husband's mother has passed away." I didn't really get along with her too well after I had moved to Edgewood. One of the reasons why was because of her drug abuse. I didn't agree with it. And as much as it may seem horrible to keep a mother from her son, one day she showed up at my house with all of her things and said, "Well, I'm here to stay." And she proceeded to burn my clothes with cigarettes and expect me to take her to wherever she wanted to go and chauffeur her. And it got to a point where my ex would even adjust my schedule to help accommodate to her. And I never had any time to myself. I never had any time off. We only had a 2-bedroom place, and it was already cramped as it was with my ex and my brother and 2 dogs. She was sleeping on the couch and kind of ruling my world. And one day she had asked me to take her to a doctor's appointment, which I had no problem with, but I had other things to do. And so as we were driving, She was like, now you have to go here. Now you have to go there. Now I want to go see my sister. Now I want this. Now I want that. And I finally just said, look, I'm sorry. I've had enough. I have to get home. And I really have to, I have other things I have to do. I have like a week's worth of laundry I have to do. I have to clean up the house, blah, 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 blah. And she said, you'll do as I say because I let you back into this family after you cheated on my son. And I turned around and just said, you're not going to treat me like crap. You're not going to treat me like crap and expect me to do everything. No. I pulled over on the side of the road and I let her out of my car and I said, if I never see you again, it'll be too soon. And those were the last words I ever said to my ex-mother-in-law. And now I'm getting a phone call from her niece saying, I need you to reach out to your husband because she has passed away. So right before Thanksgiving that year, we had buried my ex-mother-in-law. It wasn't very good timing. Because of the holidays, also, I wasn't making a lot of money because, like I said, once again, marketing is mostly commission. And on top of that, now I had to take a bunch of time off, so I wasn't getting paid any hourly either. And I didn't get paid holidays either as well. So what time I was taking off in general, I just wasn't getting paid for. My mom had helped me out a little bit by letting me borrow her car. We had a little bit of a family get together after the funeral at my house. My mom wanted to be part of it, but to be perfectly honest with you, we barely had the room for the people that were already there. And I felt really bad telling her she couldn't come because she was helping us. But at the same time, it really was the God's honest truth. I really didn't have any room. I remember my sister and I looking at each other and thinking to ourselves, we actually thought this lady was going to outlive my mother. But that just meant, honestly, mom's next. It kind of got to a point where my sister was starting to message me videos of my mom when she would take her to the doctor. My mom just seemed high as a kite, and we couldn't understand why. She was checking my mom's medication to make sure she wasn't overtaking it. All of it was there. We just couldn't understand. And she would send me these videos of her taking her to doctor's appointments where my mom just seemed to be high as a kite, completely inebriated, not there. The doctor would even breathalyze her. It wasn't alcohol. We knew it was some sort of opiate because she was nodding out and doing the things that most like heroin addicts would do. We just couldn't understand what was going on. Shortly after that Christmas, I had received a call from my cousin, and he was also in construction. Was hoping I would come and work for him in the marketing department to try to get more people to get a salesman to come in and sell them a deck. More specifically decks, because that's what his trade was. And I thought, you know what, this would be a really good idea because I'm not making a lot of money at the other construction company doing marketing at night. And this place was actually like not even a mile from my mom's house. So I could kind of help my sister check in on my mom because once again, she's having these bouts of inebriations and she's not really acting sober. So maybe I can check on her and just make sure things are good. And at this point, my sister had been really watching my mom and helping her for a few years, and she was starting to get a little tired of it. So I started working that job in January. Well, it wasn't too long after I got that job that I went to go see my mom. I had tried quitting smoking for New Year's. We just didn't have the money. My ex always smoked, but he smoked regular cigarettes. I smoked menthol. It's easier for someone who smokes menthol to smoke a regular cigarette, not vice versa. But my mom was also a smoker. So I was actually kind of hoping that maybe she had a cigarette because boy, was I jonesing. So I went to go check on her and I asked her if she had a cigarette. And she said, actually, I'm so impressed by what you're doing that I thought I would try to quit smoking too. So unfortunately, I don't have anything in the house. I don't know if it's a lie. I don't know. But honestly, I took it for what it was. I said goodnight. She seemed just fine. About 15 minutes later, she had had a coughing fit. she thought she was having an asthma attack and decided to call the ambulance. Calling an ambulance wasn't something my mother did willingly. Okay, she never called an ambulance. Like, she could be on her deathbed and she would call you to come and get her and take her to the hospital. But this time she called an ambulance and they took her to the hospital, and we got a call a few hours later saying that she was at the emergency room. And I remember being like, I don't understand. I would have just turned around and gotten you and taken you to the hospital. But for some reason, mom didn't want to bother me with that, which was just very shocking. Because once again, this was a woman who would call you at 2 a.m. and say, I got discharged from the ER. You wouldn't even know that she was there. You have to come get me. And you'd be like, no, call a taxi. There was an Uber back then, but there were taxis. And so, but this time it was just a little odd. She had gone in and she had had these pulmonary embolisms. It was nothing new. She had had pulmonary embolisms for a long time. Sometimes they would get dislodged and cause some breathing problems. But for us, just like her intestinal issues, it was kind of like a same stuff, different day kind of deal. So she had been admitted in the hospital for having these pulmonary embolisms and having a slight cold. Every time they would go to discharge her, something else would come out of whack. One thing in particular was her potassium, and she would crave bananas. So I remember one day I was going to go take her a banana because that's what she asked for. And she was like, I really need a good laugh. And when I had gotten a tattoo of a dolphin on my butt. And when I had gotten the tattoo, she had said, oh, let me see it. And I was a little drunk and I just said, look, mom, it swims, as I jiggled my butt and made the dolphin move. And she always thought that was funny. Well, this time she needed a laugh. So I pulled my pants down, jiggled my butt where the dolphin tattoo is, and went, look, mom, it swims. And I remember her being like, put that away. And the nurse came in. She was like, actually, it's one of the better asses I've seen in a while. And once again, gave my mom a laugh. My mom had then gotten some sort of illness while in the hospital. And this illness ended up attacking her lungs and her kidneys. One day she was great, talking, having a laugh. The next day she's being rushed to the ICU and being put on oxygen because she can't breathe. By this point, she does have an advance directive. She has a living will. After the incident with her intestines, she had decided that she was going to make it very clear that she did not want to be hooked to machines for the rest of her life, and that she did not want to live in a nursing home for the rest of her life. That if she cannot go home and be without machines, then she didn't want to live. For about a week, we were going back and forth with the doctors. Whatever illness this was, it was attacking her kidneys and it was attacking her lungs. They had put her on a machine to heat and cool the oxygen so it was easier for her to intake. Meanwhile, they were also going to try dialysis to help with the kidney functions. But that meant that there was the potential that she could be on these machines for the rest of her life. And there was a friend of ours and hers from church that she knew that had also dealt with a lot of this kind of stuff with her parents and her husband's parents and knew how to kind of handle this situation. Now, at this point, my sister was very much like, I'm the older sister. I'm taking care of this. Like, pretty much just do as I say. But deep down, I kind of knew, I don't think mom's coming out of this. When that friend came, my mother was lucid and asked some very direct questions. And that was, this machine that heats and cools the oxygen, can she take it home with her? No. If she needs this machine, will she be on it as of right now? Do you think she will be on it for the rest of her life? Yes. So if she needs it for the rest of her life and she cannot take it home, where would she be going after this? To a nursing home. All three things which were against my mother's wishes. The next question that they asked my mother was very direct, and that was, "Are you done with life? Do you wish to die?" And she said yes. At that moment, we started speaking with palliative care. Palliative care helps keep people comfortable during their final hours in need. Because of my mother's drug addictions, my mother could handle a lot of opiates. And believe it or not, each state has a limitation on how much they can give you when it comes to hospice and palliative care. But this type of palliative care wasn't just keeping her comfortable. It was literally giving her so much morphine that was to shut her heart down and to kill her. And so the palliative care team petitioned the state to make sure that if for whatever reason the state maximum, which I believe was something like 20 milligrams of liquid morphine an hour, did not work, that they could give her and administer more, in which they got that approval. Once that approval was given, my sister gave me a call and she said to me, "Get your affairs in order and pack your stuff. Get ready because you're coming to the hospital and we're going to be here until mom dies." Because that was my mother's wish. She did not want to die alone, and she did not want to die without a cold glass of water sitting next to her. The hard part of all this was that my mother would tell us that she didn't want to see my adopted dad. However, he was the only one who could sign off on this, in which he did, but he also went to go see her. And he would even call me and say, "Hey, is your sister there?" Because he knew that we were doing everything we could to keep him from seeing my mother, because that's what she was telling us. But then he would go and visit her, and they would have these really wonderful conversations, and it would look great. But I would then have to come in and say, "I'm sorry, but you have to leave." And he'd be like, "Why? We're having a great conversation." Because the last thing I was told by my mother was to keep you out of this room. I'm happy that they got some closure, and I'm happy that they got to have that conversation. But I am not happy that I had to be the one to tell him he had to leave. My sister called my uncle, and he came down. And we often expected my uncle to relay all these messages to my grandfather, because my mom's dad was still alive and well. My uncle came down. We all went to lunch. It had probably been the first time I had actually spoken to my uncle since I had gotten back with my ex-husband. He didn't exactly care for my ex-husband either, and I couldn't really blame him. But it was the choice I made, and after a few years, he was learning to live with it. We went to a local restaurant. We had something really good to eat and a few beers, because honestly, we didn't know how long this was going to take. And we were anticipating that by the time we got to the hospital that they would have already started administering the morphine. But for one reason or another, they had proceeded to wait until we got there to administer the morphine. So my mother was like writhing in pain. It's not how my sister wanted me to see her. And they made me sit outside and wait until they administered at least a little bit of morphine to get her to calm down a bit. But that night was the night that we didn't leave her side until she left this earth. At first, my mother was talkative. She was happy. She was comfortable. She smiled. The nurse that would come to her house and take care of her from time to time and check in on her had come to check in on her now and proceeded to help my sister give her a sponge bath so she felt clean. We turned on music, her favorite, Stevie Nicks, and we watched as she fell into a nice slumber. During that slumber, though, she would often foam at the mouth because her lungs were full of liquid, and we would help remove that. She would twitch from time to time, and we would also just watch her stats drop. but it wasn't dropping very quickly. And it was more of a comfortable, oh, mom's just sleepy and happy and comfortable situation. So I had called my ex-husband. He had a friend over, and I asked them to come and bring me some food because honestly, I didn't know how long this was going to take and I was getting kind of hungry. They brought me some McDonald's. I asked him if he wanted to say goodbye, and he said no, it was just going to be too hard for him. And while I was with him trying to eat some very cold McDonald's food and smoke a cigarette, I got a call. Mom, stats are dropping. You need to come in. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't finish my food. I went up, and sure enough, her stats had dropped, but not enough. But we knew it could be any moment. I sat on one side, my sister sat on the other, and we just sat there and listened to the music that she loved to listen to and the beeping of the monitors. Somewhere around 4:30 in the morning, the monitors really started going. And we started realizing that, it really could be any moment now. And one of the things that the nurses would say, because they've seen this multiple times before, is that, she might twitch, she might say something, she might open her eyes a little bit, whatever. But no one had prepared me for what I was about to see. Her stats started dropping and dropping drastically. And all of a sudden, she shot up out of the bed, sat straight up at like a 90-degree angle, her eyes wide as can be, almost looking around, foaming at the mouth. And then about a minute later, she just shot right back down. And that was it. She was done. She had left the world around 5 o'clock in the morning. It was the strangest, scariest, most traumatizing thing I think I had ever seen. And I had seen her die pretty much due to overdose. I had seen all of her intestines. I had seen so many things when it came to my mother. But now I can say I had watched her die a very gruesome death. One that I had nightmares for almost 2 years later. It was strange because you sit there for about 30 minutes and you cry and you hold her hand and you look at her and then you just leave. You just get up and you go home. Like, I didn't even know what to do. Just start a new day. And the thing was I didn't cry. My sister cried, held her hand, said a bunch of prayers. But I was like, okay, time to go home now. And my uncle was really shocked and was like, I think I should go home with her because honestly, you're in shock and I don't know if you're processing this right. And I was like, sure, you can come to my house. Not a problem. Called my ex-husband, let him know. By the way, we're on our way home now. And he was like, I'm so sorry. Before going home, we went to go see my dad because he worked at a local grocery store, not even a half a mile from the hospital. And he looked at me and said, you will always be my little girl. I'm so sorry. But the one person that I just could not be happy with at that moment was his girlfriend. Because during other situations in my mom's life, medical situations, my mom being in the hospital, there have been times my mom was in the hospital and he would come to visit her and bring his girlfriend in tow. And he always wanted the two of them to get along, but my mother was a very vain woman. And his girlfriend was, and to this day, is drop dead gorgeous. And my mother really struggled with the fact that this woman was just so gorgeous. It was because of this woman that she did not want him in the hospital when she was dying. And so I really just struggled with this woman at the moment. A cousin of mine had reached out to me and said, is there anything I could do for you? And I said, just keep that woman away from me. I swear I would probably knock her head off right now because I was just so angry that I couldn't have my whole family together during this moment. 3 hours later, I get a call and a text from my dad. How dare you? You better take that post off of Facebook. What are you talking about? You said you would knock my girlfriend's head off and that you would beat the crap out of her. I did not post that publicly. I had a private conversation that I was upset and that this was why. And he said, you better take that back. No, I'm not going to take it back. I won't deny that his girlfriend is a wonderful mother. I wish my mother was as good as she was. I won't deny that she's a wonderful woman who loves my father deeply. But has she liked me? No. She was the reason why he didn't come to my birthday party. You walk into their house, there is not one picture of me on the wall, not even as a child. And the excuse was, well, because your mother's in those pictures, not from school, not the school pictures that are taken. I knew that they were trying to get me out of their lives. I was the other woman's child. I get it. I 100% get it. And in that moment, I had not only lost my mother, but I ended up losing my adopted father too.